And good evening, everybody, and welcome back. Welcome to session number 199 of Exploring the Lord of the Rings. We are narrowing in on our 200th class, which we're going to get reasonably close to the departure of the company for the south. So that's... Anyway, that's going to be really exciting. We're getting close to Christmas. Of course, it's Christmas Day. Will be Christmas Day when they set out. But of course, that's before we, not Christmas Day in our time, but Christmas Day there. Yes, Nancy, this is the first time. I'm getting old. I'm officially old now because I'm wearing my reading glasses on stream for the first. I'm kind of like I'm like coming out with my glasses here. I've actually been cheating with them for some time, but I've been not using them on stream. But I've come to the point where like I can't even anymore. So yeah, I'm wearing my old man glasses. Probably will be from now on. So anyway, yeah. So there we are. I've never had to wear glasses of any kind my whole life, so I've been really lucky for most of my life. But now, age creeping up with me here. But anyway. Okay, but let us get quick announcements, mostly moots for the announcements. I just wanted to remind folks we've got New England Moot coming up very soon indeed now. We are only a week and a half away from New England Moot in Durham, New Hampshire, the 25th of September. I'm doing a lot of detailed planning of the remote part of our moot now for our hybrid moot. It's going to be really fun. So looking forward to seeing folks who can attend and to seeing as much as I can of the folks who are attending remotely there as well. However, our second moot, Middle Moot, is coming up soon thereafter, and I know it's easy for me to kind of focus on New England Moot because it's coming up first, right? But Middle Moot is happening only 2 weeks after that. So everybody in the Midwest, don't forget about Middle Moot this year. Middle Moot is going to be back in Waterloo, Iowa, like it was 2 years ago, and really excited to see folks again there. Also, we will be able to. We'll be doing that in a fully hybrid way as well. But Mike Drought is speaking at Middle Moot. Mike Drought is speaking. It's going to be awesome. Mike is always a wonderful speaker. So it's going to be Mike Drought talking about philology. Really cool. So if you can come, if you're anywhere in the area around Iowa, then if you can get down to Iowa, then you can come and you can meet Mike Drought in person. If not, you can attend digitally and hear his address, and it's going to be really cool. So anyway, you should definitely check that out. We have you can go to signumuniversity.org/events and find our Middle Moot page. Also, I think tomorrow is the deadline for proposals for presentations for Middle Moot. So definitely look into that ASAP if you want to be involved there. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So, and then November 6th is going to be Bay Moot out in Berkeley, California. So that is getting closer as well. So the other thing that I did want to remind folks of is that we are now 8 days away from starting The Nature of Middle-earth. The Nature of Middle-earth, subtitle, Tolkien Likes Math. So help us crunch the numbers and take a deep dive into Tolkien's later world building. It's going to be a lot of fun. So please, we're starting this with the Mythgard Academy next Wednesday. So next Wednesday night, not tomorrow, But the week after that, Wednesday, September 22nd, a date that I hope you take note of, we will be starting our discussion. We're going to begin by discussing the first 5 chapters. The chapters are really short if you've seen them already. I know it's Frodo's birthday too, but Jordan, of course, Frodo in his own writings in The Lord of the Rings has biased me towards thinking of it as Bilbo's birthday. Anyway, yeah. Cook of Wood and Miner, this is, you just bought the book and it's the first one you'll be reading along with in real time. Yeah, I'm actually restricting myself. I'm not reading ahead. So we're going to discuss the first 5 chapters next week, and I've only read the first 5 chapters, so don't tell me anything about the rest of the book. We're going to be kind of discovering it together, and I'm excited to discover this with you guys. So anyway, it's gonna be fun. So the nature of Middle Earth, Nathan, if this is the first time you're hearing of this, let me just Tolkien, sort of. This is edited by Carl Hostetter, but it's actual writings from Tolkien. These are notes and revisions and things. Basically, this is from like the 50s and 60s, primarily 1950s and 1960s, after The Lord of the Rings, when he was in that prolonged period of reworking the Silmarillion material. This is a wonderful follow-up from the Morgoth's Ring discussion that we did last year. And it's that extended period of time in which Tolkien was really digging in and doing world building, really consistent world building, and he was changing a lot of the rules and a lot of his ideas. You will see, as we began to see in Morgoth's Ring, and as I think I already in chapter 5 can see even more clearly, only just in chapters 1 through 5 of The Nature of Middle-earth, why he never rewrote the Silmarillion. Because so much, he was going to change so much. Like the entire world is sort of changing all around it. So, anyway, we're going to be digging into this stuff. So this is so exciting because this is the first time since The Peoples of Middle-earth was published, the final volume of the history of Middle-earth. This is the first time in decades that we have gotten brand new Tolkien Middle-earth material that we have never seen before. And that is just unbelievably exciting. Cook of Wood and Miner just provided a link to the Ask Me Anything that Carl Hostetter did on Reddit. Actually, it's funny, Cook. I'm actually going to do an Ask Me Anything on Reddit, on the same thing, the Tolkien fans Reddit subreddit there. I'm going to do an Ask Me Anything there sometime, probably later this month. I need to decide on a date, but I'll let you guys know when the date's going to be, but I'm going to do that later on this month. They just invited me to do that. It's going to be fun. Anyway, yeah. So, but anyway, okay. So again, I don't have the link for that yet, but I'll be posting that. It'll probably be posted tomorrow is my hope. We're going to have a slightly experimental interface for the Nature of Middle-earth class. That's going to be entertaining. But anyway, that'll be tomorrow. So, but next Wednesday, September 22nd, is going to be the date we'll start our discussions of the Nature of Middle-earth. So, all right. But let's jump back into the text here. Last time we were looking at the passage of time and then that fascinating description of that red star in the southern sky, balefully looking over the edge, peeking over the edge of Rivendell, right? And glaring down at Frodo, showing us, I still suspect, more about Frodo's own sort of imaginative frame of mind than about Hobbit notions of astronomy. That is, I still believe that Mars was what he was seeing in the sky. But again, I don't see any reason to believe that the hobbits necessarily unilaterally, generally, culturally see Mars as, particularly baleful or whatever. That I think was an association by Frodo, that he was associating it with the Eye of Sauron. In that moment, I think, had he not been contemplating a journey into the south, into the heart of the Black Land in order to cast the ring into the fire, he probably wouldn't have made that association, I think, with Mars in the same way. Yeah. Yeah. So, Nathan, I am not. I could believe that it's a star. I think it's probably Mars. I think it's probably Mars, both because of the color and because of the sort of singularity of it, right? It's not mentioned as in the context of any other constellation. It is, of course, possible there are some other red giants in the sky that are visible and look reddish to the naked eye, like Aldebaran, for instance, which I think was suggested last time. But I would not believe that it's Betelgeuse. Of all of the stars that it could be, I would say that I would not say that it's Betelgeuse, because Orion is the constellation that we've already seen. Red Borgil, I believe, is over there, and he didn't think about it that way. But remember, Orion is, Menomachar with his shining belt. That is it's an not anti-Sauron, anti-Morgoth constellation, really. But anyway, I didn't mean singularity in that sense, JJ. I'm not suggesting that Mars is a black hole. But anyway, so it's anyway, as I say, that's why I do think it's Mars, but it almost certainly couldn't be Betelgeuse, because he would not be associating it. And Borgil, I believe, by the way, to be Aldebaran, not Betelgeuse, because of course Aldebaran being in Taurus is right next to Orion. So when Red Borgil rises and then Menomachar with his shining belt, I think that Red Borgil is probably Aldebaran, has always been my interpretation. But anyway, okay. But that's that's not what we came here to talk about tonight. So now we go from the moving of time, and we begin to thinking about geography. So, off to the journeys of the scouts. The hobbits had been nearly 2 months in the house of Elrond, and November had gone by with the last shreds of autumn, and December was passing, when the scouts began to return. Now let's pause here for a second, because this, of course, picks up on some of the discussion we had last time about the progression of time and their consciousness of the progression of time. And I think it's fairly clear that now, it's a little bit hard because you could say, well, this is written by Frodo or Sam, probably Frodo, later on, after the fact, right? And so, he knows in retrospect the date when they set out. And so in describing this from afar, right, like from his sitting room in Bag End after they returned to the Shire, rather than during, in this time in Rivendell, he knows how many months has gone by. So the fact that it says November has gone by and December was passing doesn't prove that they were aware of that. And yet the description of it, I think, does suggest it. We saw that in the last passage, they were very aware, even in a sense, perhaps more aware than they might have been in the Shire. I'm not sure about that. I don't think we can prove that. But anyway, certainly no less conscious of the passing of the seasons, right? Of the changing over of the seasons. And we're getting that again. November had gone by with the last shreds of autumn. We were looking at the change in the quality of the light. We were looking at autumn rolling in and rolling out, right, as they're sitting there. And this seems to me just to be sort of continuing the same thing. That is, before, the description didn't have any dates attached to it. There were no calendar references in the earlier passage, the ones we were talking about last week. So this sentence as a transitional sentence seems to be kind of glancing back over that same passage of time that was described in the previous section. And now it's attaching calendar bits to it, right? So that, calendar references, so that we can actually see the time passing here. Fourth Dauntless, exactly. This stands in contrast to the beginnings of spring coming in Lorien without Sam the gardener even noticing. Yes, exactly. And I wonder if he would, Frodo, the narrator, that is, would even describe it in this way had they had that same experience of, when it comes mid-December or late December, for them to be like, wow, like, I remember we were there for 3 or 4 days, but I would swear it had never been 2 months or 3 months. Anyway, yeah. But anyway, now the scouts are beginning to return. They'd been nearly 2 months in the House of Elrond. Yeah, sorry, I was skipping the time that they were on the road between Rivendell and I was thinking of Weathertop at the beginning of October in my head when I said almost 3 months then. But of course, I was skipping over the time that they spent on the road. So yes, they'd been nearly 2 months in the House of Elrond. Now we've got the scouts beginning to return. Some had gone north beyond the springs of the Horwell into the Ettenmoors, and others had gone west, and with the help of Aragorn and the Rangers, had searched the lands far down the Grey Flood as far as Tharbad, where the Old North Road crosses the river by a ruined town. Many had gone east and south, and some of these had crossed the mountains and entered Mirkwood, while others had climbed the pass at the sources of the Gladden River, and had come down into Wilderland over the Gladden Fields, and so at length had reached the old home of Radagast at Rosgobel. Radagast was not there, and they had returned over the high pass that was called the Redhorn Gate. The sons of Elrond, Elladan and Elrohir, were the last to return. They had made a great journey, passing down the Silverlode into a strange country, but of their errand they would not speak to any save to Elrond. Okay. All right, so let's map this, because I don't want to do this in my head. So, Scout set number 1. Some had gone north beyond the springs of the Horwell into the Ettenmoors. Okay, so I have a map. So here we are in Rivendell, right? They've gone north. So this is the River Horwell. The River Horwell, you'll remember, is the one that's crossed by the last bridge. The one where Glorfindel left his stone. The one where Glorfindel found several servants of the enemy waiting there, and they withdrew and he pursued them, remember? So this is the Horwell. So the source of the river Horwell is way up here in the Hithyglir, that is the Misty Mountains, up north. And so the Ettenmoors, as you can see, are just north of that. And so that tracks with what was just described here, beyond the springs of Horwell into the Ettenmoors. So this is where they go. So these go north. Now remember, Gandalf had said the land up here, which looks blank, right? On the Middle-earth map here, we've got the Trollshaws and a little forest down here. But notice that this map is very narrative centric around here. That is, we get lots of the detail, almost every detail of the path of the narrative, right? So like here's Hobbiton and the Brandywine Bridge and the Old Forest and the Barrow Downs and Bree and even the Chetwood and the Midgewater Marshes individually labeled, right? And then the Weather Hills and Weathertop and the Last Bridge, right? And so that and the Trollshaws with the forest that they emerge from in order to get to the ford of Bruinen, right? So you can see that almost everything that's mentioned in the narrative, almost every geographical portion that's mentioned in the narrative is sort of labeled. So this middle part in the area of Rivendell, as I say, is very kind of narrative centric. Above, north of Rivendell, on this map is just a blank space, essentially, between Rivendell and the Horwell. But recall that Gandalf told us that this terrain up here is so bad that he had to dismount. He had to let go of Shadowfax. Shadowfax couldn't even go with him. In that, which means, I assume, there's like climbing that has to go on, right? Up here, like, again, it's just like not horse country, right? You can't even ride a horse through there. So the scouts are going presumably on foot, right? Through this very rough terrain, all the way up to the Horwell and up into the Ettenmoors, which of course is troll country. So all the way up through, and notice, so they're going more than halfway to Angband, right? Or Angband. No, that's further north. Angmar. I apologize. They're going more than halfway up to Angmar of old. If you see, like, they're literally about 60% of the way to Carndum from Rivendell, right? So this is a long ways, right? A long ways north that they're going, all through rough and very dangerous terrain, and all on foot. Okay. All right. So that's our first leg. Now let's go back. So first I just want to see it all on the map, and then we'll think about it. Because my question is going to be exactly, Flammer, for what you're saying. Why are they doing this? That's what I'm hoping we can figure out. So, okay. Next. Others had gone west, and with the help of Aragorn and the Rangers, had searched the lands far down the Grey Flood as far as Tharbad, where the Old North Road crossed the river by a ruined town. Okay, so we're talking about here, Tharbad. So the Gwathlo, the Grey Flood, that's where the Bruinen and the Horwell come together, right? So those two, the one that's crossed by the ford and the one that's crossed by the last bridge, merge, right, down here in, more southerly or central Ariador, right, and become the Gwathlo, the Grey Flood, which is a pretty significant river, which, here it goes, comes down all the way to the river. This was a major navigable river for the Númenóreans. This was an important river in Númenórean days, in the Second Age, when they were coming to Middle-earth. That's why there's, like, no more forests down here, and there used to be. But anyway, that's a different story. So Tharbad is here at the crossing. So yeah, Nathan, they traveled that far and back. Really far. This is a long journey all the way down to Tharbad. And note, they don't just go straight down to Tharbad, I don't think. Like, it's not like they're just, like, following the River Bruinen and then, keep following it down to Tharbad. They go west. So, like, some went north to the Entmoors, some go west and explored the lands as far as Tharbad. So I think, and we're talking about Aragorn and the Rangers here are the ones that are helping with this. I believe that they're basically covering this whole triangle of land, basically between the road, right? This is the Greenway that comes up north, and there's a separate road that crosses by Sarn Ford and heads up in this direction, right? Sarn Ford over the Brandywine, which gets alluded to several times, but of course we never actually see it. But anyway, this kind of triangle of land between the Greenway, from Tharbad, between bordered on one side by the Greenway between Tharbad and Bree, the east-west road, and the Grey Flood. That's, I believe, the area that they're scouting. Aragorn and the other rangers here, primarily. I agree, Drowsnake, they're probably looking for Boromir's horse. Of course, fruitlessly, because it went home. Anyway, yeah. Yeah, Bricktails, you're right. On the afternoon after the council, Aragorn left with the sons of Elrond, but in this description we have Aragorn south and west with the rangers and the sons going over the mountains. Yeah, they did leave. It didn't mean they went in the same direction, or like that they just went to the one place. He was, I don't know. He didn't go with them all the way to where they were going. But anyway, it's a big area for them to cover here. But so we got the northerly ones who go up to the Ettenmoors, the southerly ones who go down towards all the way down to Tharbad, we're told. All right, okay. Many had gone east and south, and some of these had crossed the mountains and entered Mirkwood, while others had climbed the pass at the sources of the Gladden River and had come down into Wilderland over the Gladden Fields, and so at length had reached the old home of Radagast at Hrolsgobel. Okay, first we get some had crossed the mountains and entered Mirkwood. Okay, so here we are in Rivendell. I assume crossed the mountains and entered Mirkwood means straight cross the mountains, like due east from Rivendell. right? So over the high pass up here, right? So some of them just crossed straight over the mountains and went on into Mirkwood, right? South of the Carrick, across the Old Ford, and like on the Old Forest Road or something, right? And we don't know exactly where they're headed, but that looks like that first group that we're seeing through there, right? But then there was a second group that went south first, right? They jogged south a little bit and then went over the mountains here at another pass, coming out by the source of the Gladden River, which is down here about halfway between, the Carrick and the High Pass and Dimrill Dale down here in the south, right? So they went over here and they went down the Gladden River to the Gladden Fields, which are right here. And they went down and then they met Rhosgobel. Now, Rhosgobel's not on this map, but it's down around here, right? So, wait, did I not say the Gladden River? Yeah, so, okay. Anyway, Rhosgobel is somewhere around here. So we got some that just make a beeline for Mirkwood, by which I suspect it means going to actually talk to the Wood Elves in Mirkwood, right? It doesn't say that. It just says some of these had crossed the mountains and entered Mirkwood. Like, maybe they didn't come back. But we're told they're coming back. So, but apparently they entered Mirkwood. I don't know how far they went into Mirkwood or why. We don't know why they did any of these things. But again, I'm assuming that those who made a beeline for Mirkwood didn't just go to the edge of the forest, look around and turn back. They entered it, right? So if you're entering it up here, this is the northern half of Mirkwood. And so I assume that it's, getting in touch with Thranduil and his people over there. We're not told that explicitly, but I'm going to go on and guess that they actually connected with, the allies in North Mirkwood over here. Those who went down the Gladden River, I don't know that they were necessarily like that Rhosgobel was their purpose, like the whole point of their trip was to go to Rhosgobel. But certainly we have at least 3 separate portions of this land, the Anduin Vale, right? Where the Great River is running between Mirkwood and the Misty Mountains, gets at least 3 different sets of scouts, right? As we'll see. We've already seen 2 of them, the one that goes straight into Mirkwood and the other that go down here. So clearly one of the goals would seem to be to kind of cover this land in particular, this land along the river, right? Okay, so they're headed down here to Rhosgobel, which, exactly as several of you are pointing out, is not far from Dol Guldur. Okay, now what else do we got? Had come down into Wilderland over the Gladden Fields, right? Exactly, Rhosgobel. Radagast was not there, and they had returned over the high pass that was called the Redhorn Gate. So they had come south after crossing over. So instead of retracing their steps and crossing that pass, because apparently there is one, up by the source of the Gladden River, they had come back down by Holland, down here, right, by Dimrill Dale and the Redhorn Pass, which is down here by Moria, right? So that would track, right, if they came down, crossed over here, came down south to Rhosgobel, so they're now much further south. Instead of heading back north, they went straight back west across the Anduin Valley, thereby, by the way, going across another big slice of the Anduin River Valley, right, and then crossing the mountains again there. Okay. The sons of Elrond, Eladon and Elrohir, were the last to return. They had made a great journey, passing down the Silver Lode into a strange country, but of their errand they would not speak to any save Elrond. So they had passed down the Silver Lode, which is the Celebrant here. So they, I have to assume, actually went down all the way through Eregion and presumably went over the Redhorn Gate. I don't think they went through Moria itself. They must have gone over the Red Horden Gate, which was just alluded to, right, in the sentence before, when they went down, and they went down the Silver Lode into some strange country roundabouts. You almost have to conclude that that's Lorien, right? I mean, like, what stranger company would we get, right? Than that. I mean, I assume that they've gone down there, right, to Lorien. And it's interesting that that's called a great journey. On the one hand, it is, I mean, it's further south than any of the other scouts go. But I don't know, like, you know, in miles on foot, did the previous dudes who went down, crossed over the mountains, went down the Gladden River over to Rosgobel and then back up over the Redhorn Gate and back up to Rivendell actually go less far? Then maybe a little bit, but I'm not really sure. Yeah, I agree, Jordan. It might be a great journey qualitatively rather than quantitatively, perhaps. But yeah, in any case, it was a strange place. Now, Tessa, I agree. It doesn't say that they went to Lorien. It just said that they went to a strange land. So what are our options here? They went to a strange land. They could have gone to Fangorn. Fangorn's pretty strange, so that would qualify. And they would have to go, I guess, down the Silver Lode to get there. Yes, and that's a greater journey in the sense of being longer, for sure. So that's possible. They could have gone and continued down to the Brown Lands for reasons best known to themselves. That would be a greater journey also, and has the advantage of first having to go down the Silver Lode to get there. But it's the reference to the Silver Lode in particular. It seems to me almost inescapable that that's Lorien that they got to. Yeah. It seems to me to mostly fit. Yeah, I agree. The Occam's razor answer is Lorien, for sure. But let's go back and try to answer the other questions here. All right. This is a lot, right? I mean, these are really long journeys. I mean, like, look, down here, I zoomed in a little bit, so I don't have the whole map on my slide here, but we've got the Rauros way down here in the right-hand corner, right? And the Dead Marsh is over here. Mordor is just off the corner of my slide here, right? So they've got more than halfway on the entire journey that the company's going to go on. But more importantly, of course, as we know, remembering ahead, it's Eladon and Elrohir's trip, which would seem to be almost exactly, as somebody was saying, a dry run, right, of the company's trip. Down through Eregion, over the Redhorn Gate, that's plan A anyway, down the Silver Lode and into the strange country, which it seems was always their purpose, always their plan, to go down there. Yeah, exactly, Drowsnake. That's exactly it. Of course, they didn't anticipate. They didn't anticipate Moria. So yeah, I there are a couple reasons. They are the ones whose secrecy is singled out, right? That they went on a great journey. And so I kind of like the idea of its being great, not merely quantitatively, but qualitatively as well, right? It is a great journey. It is the most important of all of the scouting trips, because I think this is the plan, right? I think this is their scouting plan A, basically. Eladon and Elrohir say, all right, the goal is to go from here to Lothlorien, right? And then continue from there down the Anduin. So let's see. Let's see what the route between here and Lothlorien is like, how manageable that is. But they're not going to talk about it much because this is the secret, right? The last thing they want is for anybody to suspect that was actually the dry run, right? But at the same time, if they went to Lothlorien, it also explains the secrecy of their errand. They would not speak to any save to Elrond, because I'm betting you that they talked to Grandma while they were there and that she had some message or other. We know that when we get to Galadriel, she has had news. She is expecting them. And I think it's pretty clearly from Eladon and Elrohir that she received news of them. So she's been waiting for them ever since Eladon and Elrohir left. And I don't doubt that she has had some messages that she's sending back home to Elrond with Eladon and Elrohir, which are for his ears only. They wouldn't speak to anyone of their errand. And the errand is a really interesting word there, right? Not of their mission, not of the results of their scouting. They had an errand. They're the only ones who seem to have an errand that is like a destination, a job to do, a task to perform, and not merely, land to look at, right? Land to look over. Exactly, Bard. Going to Grandma's house is more of an errand than a mission. Yeah, exactly. Ray, exactly. It is a communication between two of the three, the holders of the three elven rings. Absolutely. Yes. The messengers of Elrond pass by Lorien on their way home up the Dimril Stair. Yes, and that could be also the other ones. That is the ones who went to Rosgobel as well. So yes. Okay. What is the message? What does Galadriel have to contribute to this discussion? I don't know. But it really does seem to me most likely that they that this was plan A. They were scouting this and they were talking to Galadriel to plan this as they were preparing to head south. I think it's pretty clear that Gandalf and Aragorn are aiming for the Redhorn Gate, and thereafter the Silverlode and Lorien. They know which pass they're heading for. Like, that is a decision that is clearly made before they leave Rivendell. And whatever it was that Eladon and Elrohir found on their journey and heard from Galadriel when they got to the end of it, or to the middle point of it, I guess, apparently confirmed the plans for them to head down in that direction. I have to imagine, there's a pretty big old briefing, Beorning in Exile, that they had to do, right, about the council and what happened there. Big news, lots of big news at the council, from the council, right? Yes, Cook of Wootton Minor. I think that there's good evidence to believe that the telepathic communication of which Galadriel and Elrond and Gandalf are manifestly capable does not happen over those kinds of distances. I do not think that Galadriel and Elrond can just get on the horn and talk to each other telepathically between Rivendell and Lothlorien. I think there are several pieces of evidence that does not happen. I think that they definitely had to do the briefing. You're right, Ray. Of course, it was Celeborn that they're briefing. I forgot. Yeah, it was Celeborn. Obviously, he's the Lord of the Galothrim, and so he needs to know these things. Absolutely. So yes, Mouse, it does seem, and Mouse, by the way, congratulations on catching up to live in the class. It's very exciting. I saw your note about that. It does seem that the scouts checked out the mountain passes, all the mountain passes, before they decided to go. I mean, again, we've got evidence that they checked out three separate ones, right? At least three. The high pass that leads to the Carrack and the Old Ford. This other pass that we don't know anything about, but which apparently exists, that leads to the sources of the Gladden River. And then, of course, the Redhorn Gate or the Dimmeril Stair, which leads over down by Moria. Those seem to be the three primary ones that they were looking at. And they seem to have scouted not only the three of them, but also, as I said, very thoroughly, this area basically between the Old Forest Road and Lorien. This whole, all of the Anduin River Valley between those 2 points. They've traversed pretty thoroughly, pretty carefully there. So Eladon and Elrohir aside, who seem to have had a special errand, which again I have to believe is briefing Galadriel and getting her advice, as well as checking out the prospective Plan A route of the company when it heads south. What's the point, right? What's the point of this whole scouting expedition? This is a massive quantity of country for them to travel for scouting purposes. What exactly are they looking for? Now, Gandalf had mentioned that they were looking for evidence of the Nazgul. Right, exactly. Fort Dauntless. They have to ensure the Nine aren't lurking around. That's exactly what he said, right? That's a pretty thorough search, right? They are checking over a wide radius. Amathorn, I also think we can see a lot of evidence that they're looking for other movements of the enemy, right? As several of you were pointing out, the Rosgobel trip doubtless is also scoping out what's going on in the greater Dol Guldur region, right? Is there evidence of orc? Because remember what they learned at the council, right? About orc activity in Mirkwood from Dol Guldur. Remember the orcs who rescued Gollum were heading down to Dol Guldur, and we do not go that way, says Legolas. So they sent some folks who go that way. They sent folks down that way, right? They didn't go to Dol Guldur, as nobody goes to Dol Guldur. You don't just walk into Dol Guldur. Well, Gandalf does, but not often. It was a big deal when Gandalf did. Okay, so yeah, so they're checking to see, are we amassing armies? Right? Is he planning an invasion? Is what's happening down there? Are they going to be walking into a trek? Because I mean, look how close to Dol Guldur they're going to be headed. If Plan A is down the Celeborn through, I mean, into Lorien is good and all, but you got to come out the other side of Lorien, right? And then look where you are. If this whole area is like an encampment of the enemy, then yeah, you don't want that. Now, Tessa, I would say, I know you were a little skeptical that they only went to Lothlorien. If that they went there down the Silverlode, I think is the Strange Land down the Silverlode is that's Lothlorien 10 times out of 10. I don't think there's any really likely other possible interpretations, or at least probable interpretations of that sentence. But that doesn't mean that they did nothing else. It's conceivable that they went past Lorien over towards Dol Guldur. They might have done some of the closer scouting towards Dol Guldur. It's right across the river and down the way, right? Anyway, so they quite likely did. Who knows? But in any case, the Rosgobel people, at the very least, they're checking on the movements of the enemy around Dol Guldur. What are they checking on down here in the Tharbad direction? Well, remember when Gandalf went south, he was passing whole bunches of people heading north, right? Now, Butterbur suspects that although some of the refugees who are heading north are just poor bodies, some of them mean no good. And I think that the wise of Rivendell are wise enough to wonder, after hearing Gandalf's story, how many of those folks coming north up the Greenway from the greater Isengard area are actually refugees. How many of them are spies of Saruman? Is Saruman, in fact, even going to move armies to the north because they know that he knows that Gandalf knows where the ring is, and that if Gandalf didn't have it on him, it's going to be up in the north, right? In the greater Shire region. And so any military action from Isengard, which is very possible because, of course, he saw all the orcs and wargs and stuff there in Isengard. That's just how they would go, right? Up the Greenway. And Tharbad is where they would cross the river, presumably. Yeah. Good. Mad Violinist is kind of working this out. Yeah, exactly. Cook was saying Tharbad is a militarily strategic location. Yes. They would be able to tell at Tharbad whether or not any significant movement of troops had come through that way, because it's the only way that troops could come into the north from the Enedwaith down in the south. So yeah, they're one of the things that they are presumably checking. Hey, is Saruman invading? Because remember, these are largely empty lands, right? I mean, an invading army could go quite a ways without anybody knowing that it was there, right? I mean, I mean, how many days south of Bree would an invading army get to before it was spotted, right? Before it was known. Anyway, yeah. Bjorning, I suspect you're right there. Tolkien, veteran of World War I, when troop movements were constrained to roads and railroads, would appreciate Tharbad's importance intimately. Sure. Okay, so we're checking on the movements of Saruman, right? Spies and or armies that he is sending into the north. We're checking on Dol Guldur, clearly. And up towards the Ettenmoors. Why do we go to the Ettenmoors? Well, that's troll country, Aragorn says. That is to say, clearly, there are still evil creatures lingering in the north. Now, of course, I know that Lotro players will be like, oh yeah, man, Angmar is a really dangerous place. Now, much has been invented for the storylines of Lotro, which is not explicitly supported in the text, though little of it explicitly contradicted either. The realm of Angmar, kind of mostly reborn that we see in the Lotro plotline, there's no direct evidence for that exactly up there. But again, we know that there are evil creatures up there in the north. Remember, even in the Shire, there were those stories. Remember the stories that Frodo used to go around listening to a lot at the very beginning of chapter 2, in those days, in those 17 years after Bilbo left and before Gandalf returned, when he would always talk to any wanderers who came into the, who came through the Shire, dwarves and such, to get tidings from the outside world. And one of the things that they heard was that like trolls had been seen in greater and greater number. And no longer, dull and stupid, but now, fierce and armed with terrible weapons, right? Remember that? So the Trollshaws, where we encountered, William and, Bert and Tom in The Hobbit, is right here. That's our little forest on the map there on the other side of the last bridge. So the trolls were even in Hobbit time wandering down this far. Is there going to be and yes, Bricktails, in the long winter armies came from the north to the Shire. Yes, it is also possible. Exactly who is the orc army that attacked Dale and Erebor, Nancy. If you mean the one in The Hobbit, that came from up in the northern Misty Mountains, up here to Mount Gundabad, right? So this northern stretch was where the goblins were living, and they came across and attacked Erebor, which is right off the map, right off my slide, over there to the right. And we're told that the goblins, the goblins of the Misty Mountains have been greatly replenished since the time of the Battle of Five Armies. So yeah, there's definitely plenty of folks, and agreed, Thomas was just going to say that. We know that there are creatures that would freeze Butterbur's blood, within a day's march of Bree. So up here, and again, this land, which is full of labels of things in the south, right? The place in the map where it says Brandywine Bridge, Chetwood, and Midgewater is otherwise blank, right? These are the North Downs. And Fornost this is Dead Man's Dyke up here, right? Up in the Fornost and Evendim area, where which has a very scary reputation in the Breeland, right? So it's clear there are still bad guys up here. The trolls over here, whatever it is that would freeze that would freeze Butterbur's blood, that lives up here by up away by Deadman's Dyke, that's haunted land, as Butterbur says, and which sometimes apparently come down into the North Downs close enough to freeze his blood if he knew it, and if the rangers weren't watching him continually. So there's plenty of threat up there to the north, despite the fact that Carn-Dûm is itself, as a political entity, no more, is no more. But anyway, yeah, so there's all kinds of stuff up here. They seem to be concerned, having gone north along the mountains, specifically to the Etten Moors, we're told. I think they're spying on the trolls and probably the goblins as well. So that's one thing that all of these directions all seem to have in common, is that all of them seem to be at least potentially connected to the larger movement of the enemy, right? So now, Bjorning in Exile, I agree that the ring, of course, does have to go south, and it does need to be screened from the enemy. So one of the questions they have when they're headed up north, up to the Etten Moors, they're clearly not scouting a potential route for the company to go. Right now, that's nor are the dudes who are going all the way down to Tharbad, presumably, right? So all of those, that can't have anything to do with the actual path that the company is going to take. So in that sense, they're not scouting in the sense of scouting out the potential route, right? I think that they are they're doing something else, right? The ones who are scouting the potential routes are not only Eladon and Elro here, who do seem to be scouting Plan A, but Plan B and C are also clearly in play, right? What if we just go straight across the High Pass, come out by the Carrack, and go down the Anduin all the way, right? From, the old ford south of the Carrack all the way down, to Rauros, right? Or at least to Sarn Gebir. One could easily do that. That could be one plan, or the Gladden, right? Let's go out down to the Gladden and then follow the Anduin down from there. So this makes sense not only of them scouting those passes, but of them trying to figure out how dangerous has that land become. That is the Anduin River Valley. How dangerous has that valley become? Are scouts from Dol Guldur really active? Are there armies moving on the plains out there? Erev Numenor asks, why did no one have trouble with Carothros this time around? Well, that's an interesting question, and we will we'll talk about that when we get there. Anyway, okay, so it seems to be on the table anyway for them to travel down the Anduin River Valley, either from that northerly pass or from the middle pass. I don't know which one's Plan B and which one's Plan C, but in whatever order, those are clearly Plans B and C, I think. But anyway, the dudes up to the north and the dudes going west, Aragorn being one of the dudes apparently going west, they're trying to figure out the circumstances, right? Are they likely to be pursued? This also, by the way, would tell them something about what the enemy was waiting to do or suspecting. Remember that they said in the council that they believed that Sauron believes that they're going to take it to the sea, right? Their money is that Sauron, as soon as he learns that the ring is at Rivendell, is going to be like, oh man, the elves have it. They're going to totally send it to Valinor, right? He assumes that that's going to be the council's Plan A. That they're going to bring it right to him is not going to be his suspicion, what he expects to happen, and that they're going to try to destroy it, Gandalf is going to tell us later, is not going to enter into his darkest dreams. By scouting, what are the enemies in the north country doing? And what are any spies and enemies in the west country doing? That is going to help them to understand what the enemy is preparing for. Elrond said that he thought that the path to the sea was fraught with greatest peril. He expects all of the spies that the enemy has to be like in a net right to the west of them, to at least detect, if not detain them, and recapture the ring when they head west with it. So to some extent, exactly, Emma Thorne, they're trying to figure out what the enemy might or might not know, is one of the things that I think they probably could conclude by seeing what the enemy and his servants are doing. If the Greenway, down there up in the South Downs, right, up by Andrath, south of Bree, if there's a whole bunch of enemies there, if the company is going to head south in the way down straight towards Eregion along the between the Bruinen and the mountains, right, this is of course the path that we know they're going to go. And if this is Plan A all along, that they're going to head down this way, it doesn't much matter what happens south of Bree, right? I mean, the enemy is not going to suddenly ambush them from way over there. They can't even get there conveniently, right, without having to come all the way down through Tharbad. The rivers make this journey complicated for the enemy, especially in significant numbers. So again, I don't think that their scouting north or their scouting west doesn't seem to me to have very much to do with the party's journey, the planning of the Fellowship's journey. I think it has more. I think it has more to do with them seeing what the enemy is up to, and by observing their movements, guessing how much they know and what actions they are attempting to take as a consequence of what they're guessing. It is possible that they've sent out some doubles. They're engaging in some misdirection. I think that that's possible. At the very least, it does make the Fellowship kind of blend in, doesn't it? I mean, there's been a whole bunch of small parties of folks heading out from Rivendell, going every which direction, right? Crossing the lands hither and yon. Apart from the fact that they have hobbits with them and therefore might be a rather suspect scouting party if anybody got close enough to detect that fact, the Fellowship could easily look like just another scouting party, right? Yeah. That's true. Bart, I suppose it's theoretically possible that they could have sent out fake hobbits with the other parties so that they get used to parties of elves from Rivendell in the company of hobbits, inflatable hobbits. Yeah, I doubt it. They could bring in bolsters, exactly as you were suggesting. They just all ride with a bolster and a little rug in front of them. It's there it is. And Odo, Chris, exactly. But I doubt it. I doubt it. I bet you, though, that they did send Glorfindel west. Because I still got to think that if I'm Sauron and I'm thinking they're going to send the ring overseas, my first dread has to be Glorfindel on his wicked fast horse, just heading straight west like a shot. What are they going to do? Who's going to stand up to him? The Ringwraiths couldn't stand up to him. Not unless maybe all 9 of them are together and, that ship has sailed, so to speak. So yeah, I don't see them stopping Glorfindel if he just heads straight out. We don't know where Glorfindel went, but I wouldn't be surprised if he did go west. Wouldn't they want to claim it? Yeah. From Sauron's perspective, he would assume that they would want to claim it. But what would the new Ring Lord do? Where would the new Ring Lord go? It'd have to head south eventually, but it's not clear to me exactly what happens. And Nancy, I agree. If the ring goes west, Sauron wins. Unless they can send it into the west and like Aule can unmake it, would be, I think, Sauron's only fear there, basically. Emily, that's exactly the kind of thinking that we learn later that Sauron is likely to have, that if you declared yourself the new Ring Lord, you'd need to go and put down all of your rivals. So maybe you march on Círdan first and then take all of his ships and sail down south, right? And attack, because it's that would obviously be the better way to get to Mordor, right? If you have the ships of Círdan the Shipwright, having put him down, Círdan, I mean, as a potential rival, you go take all of his ships and then you sail around the south and you come and land with a huge, intimidating army, down somewhere in Umbar or something, and give Sauron some pretty scary flashbacks, right? So that would be a method for a new ring lord to act. Now, I agree, if you're worried about your rivals, you go south to Lorien, but maybe not right away. Maybe you consolidate your power a bit first before you take on Galadriel. I'm just saying, I think that Galadriel is the penultimate step of conquest. You know what I mean? Exactly, not the first boss you want to take on. Or of course, and Celeborn. Absolutely right. No, Sauron is the final boss. Galadriel would be the penultimate boss, but then you'd want to beef up both your armies and your own personal consolidation of power first. I would think. And yes, Ray Burns, that's a really interesting point. By taking out Círdan, you might gain the new ring lord another elven ring. Sure, absolutely, yeah. Why not? So yeah, and you could decide, Chris, I think, like, especially if you're coming around by sea, you could just leave Saruman high and dry. Like, who's he gonna scare from Isengard if you're trying to cross the Gap of Rohan? Well, okay, right, or even go down south through Gondor, then you've got to cope with Saruman. But if you were a ring lord and particularly cunning, you could, again, if you sailed around to the south, you could leave both Saruman and Galadriel high and dry, right? And don't sleep on Denethor. Agreed. Bond, right? Yeah, you'll want to come in to Gondor, right? Consolidate your power base there, and then from there attack Mordor, perhaps. Anyway, yeah. So no, there's lots of potential there for westward movement, even by a new ring lord, right? Whether it be Gandalf or whether it be Elrond. Like, let's just say it's Elrond for argument's sake, right? Yeah. Anyway. Okay. So I think this helps me to make more sense of the purpose of the scouts. They're not just checking the land for spies, though presumably they're doing that. They're not just looking for evidence of the ringwraith still hanging out, though we know they're doing that as well. They're interested in assessing the current state of the larger geopolitical situation, right? Is Sauron advancing from Dol Guldur? What's he doing with the Misty Mountain orcs? Is he sending them down? Should we expect Rivendell to be invaded from the north soon? Right? Is that what's going to be happening here? If so, perhaps that should time when we get the ring the heck out of Dodge, right? Is Saruman invading Ariador from the south? He could do that. That's one of his options, right? Is that what he's going to do? Of course, now we know that's not actually what he's doing, but it's a potential option for him, right? Yeah, and so and again then with Dol Guldur as well. So once they know all those things, then they'll be prepared not only to make an educated decision about what route they should send the ring by, and notice the one that they take, the one that threads the needle, right? The one that goes right down the middle, that avoids Ariador. They're not going to go down Boromir's. They're not going to retrace Boromir's steps, right? Head down through like Cardoon of old, right? Hit the Greenway and head south down the Greenway. That would be one potential route, right? They're definitely not doing that. The whole let's bring the ring right past Isengard. puts the kibosh on that without doing too much scouting, I suspect. But still, they decide not to go in that direction. They're going they decide not to cross the river and go down. They're minimizing, in fact, the time that they spend in the Anduin River Valley. Whatever they found there was not conducive to the ring going. So they're not going to go over. They're not going to go over the other way. They're going to head straight south in between. Exactly. Threading the needle between Dol Guldur and Isengard, staying as far as they can from both of those things. If we see Isengard and Dol Guldur there, they are indeed going to head right down the middle, trying to avoid both to the greatest extent that they can. And you're right, Hrothgar. When Sauron attacked Eregion, he came up that way, up through the Enedwaith and such. So yes, it is not a new route at all. Good. So for Dauntless, I think that the ones who went north are looking at Angmar and Gundabad. They only went as far as the Etten Moors, but I think that my sense is that's the whole reason to go that way, is like if they're mobilizing Gundabad and Angmar, they'll probably be able to see it from the Etten Moors, which are clearly, they're called moors, not mountains, but it's clearly high land, right? So from there, they should be able to get some glimpse of, like, are things mobilizing on this side of the mountains? How much do they have to worry about from the goblins up there? So I think that that's, I think that they are kind of covering the north up there. Yeah. Okay, cool. I think that mostly does it. Radagast. Where's Radagast? Why isn't Radagast home? Bart is very worried about Radagast. Tessa, yeah, he's never mentioned again either. It does say the old home of Radagast. He doesn't live there anymore? The fact that they go out of their way to say Radagast was not there suggests that there is at least the possibility that he might have been there, right? When last we saw Radagast, we might as well go back to the map. He was south of Bree, right? Remember Gandalf looped down, I don't know if he went all the way to Sarnford. He did go to Sarnford, didn't he? So when Gandalf left Frodo, he went down to and crossed over at Sarnford and then went back up the Greenway, right? So he met Radagast somewhere around in through here, right? Yeah, Nahor, that's what I'm wondering, if it's his old home in the sense of being his previous home or in the sense of being his long-term home, right? Like, that's the old home of Radagast, right? He's been there for ever so long. It is possible that that's what it means, right? That it is his home from of old, right? But anyway, so Radagast was last seen turning and herring off down the Greenway south, right? And Gandalf says, hey, tell the birds and beasts who are your friends, right? Where does Radagast end up? Well, we know that he ends up in touch with the eagles, right? He's in. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Who knows exactly where he's going to talk to his bird and beast friends, but he was originally going to report to Saruman, but I don't know that he was like actually heading back to Isengard originally before Gandalf said, "Hey, go send your bird friends and find out." I think that he must have been headed to the Misty Mountains. And so one could wonder why he was headed. Didn't he head south? Didn't he turn around and maybe he turned around and headed to the north? Darn it. I got to go back to the text then. Because Gandalf is actually coming up from the south. Trying to figure out, did we get a reference to JJ or somebody else with the electronic text? Somebody look up that paragraph and paste it in for me. Can you? Into the comments. Okay. I myself shall turn back at once. Okay, great, Matt. But where? Earlier on, like in the encounter. Okay, right. In his tale, okay, great. Bricktails is reminding us that in his story in the council, Gandalf calls him Radagast the Brown, who at one time dwelt at Rosgobel, near the borders of Mirkwood. That would suggest that old home of Radagast does mean former home. That, like, he used to live in Rosgobel before the neighborhood, went downhill, basically. With the rise of Dol Guldur again and, like, things of darkness spreading through Mirkwood, he's property values went down so badly down in southern Mirkwood that he just had to up stakes and leave, right? That does suggest that. Okay. It says he would have ridden straight off, as if the nine were after him. Okay, but more. I want the beginning. The beginning of their conversation. I turned east and north. Right, so I turned east and north and journey along the Greenway. So Gandalf is heading north towards Bree along the Greenway. Not far from Bree, I came upon a traveler sitting on a bank beside the road. Okay. He's sitting on a bank beside the road. So we don't see him coming. Right? Okay. Nor do we know the direction that he's herring off he goes to ride off really fast, but we don't know whether it's north or south. Interesting. Flammifer says, Gandalf says, I could not follow him then and there. To Isengard, presumably. So yes, I agree that does suggest that he headed south. Yeah. Okay. Does that mean that Radagast was headed to Isengard? Possibly. Does that mean that he got to Isengard? I don't think so. He definitely at least makes a stop on the way to Isengard. Because he finds Gwaihir and sends Gwaihir. And Gwaihir lives up here, up by the Carrick, right? Where is Radagast going? I mean, look, doubtless he's got bird contacts down there, right? Yeah, I doubt he made it to Isengard. Nor does Saruman in his reference to Radagast, seem to expect him to return, right? His purpose with Radagast was to send Radagast out to deliver that message to Gandalf. Yeah. I got to think he's headed back to Mirkwood too, but I got to think he's headed the wrong direction. Now, he was never a traveler, because there is no good road, I guess in theory, from here, depending on how far, because we don't know exactly how far south he is, right? Gandalf crosses at Sarnford and heads north up the Greenway towards Bree when he meets. So they somewhere, you know, like around Androth, somewhere in here in this pass through the South Downs, is where Gandalf and Radagast meet. It seems to me much faster for him to head north, head straight out the Dwarf Road, past Rivendell, over the High Pass, and straight into Mirkwood, just like those other scouts went. That seems to me the fastest way to get back to Mirkwood, if that's where he's going. But maybe not. Maybe if you're sufficiently far south, you head down the Greenway to Tharbad, cross at Tharbad, and then head up the Glandwin and cross over the Dimril Stair there and head off. I mean, that would be, I guess, even a straighter way to get to the greater Rosgobel area. The ways of wizards are mysterious, and we don't know what he did, but I've got to think, keep in mind the gap of time as well. Gandalf, after he separates from Radagast, Gandalf heads north to Bree, writes his undelivered letter, then goes south all the way on foot, as far as I can tell, to Isengard, right, down here in the Gap of Rohan, is imprisoned for a month, right, some time, right, and then that's when Gwaihir gets there. What time is it? Somebody remind me. Appendix B. When is Gandalf imprisoned? When does Gandalf arrive? I know it's Mid-Year's Day when they meet. When does he arrive in Isengard? Gandalf. When does Gandalf arrive? How much time passes there? Okay, it's July 10th. Okay, July 10th. So it's, we've got at least, 6 to 8 weeks between Gandalf and Radagast's meeting, and it's a couple months, right? 2 months he's imprisoned there. So what was the calendar date? Mid-Year's Day? Beginning of July, right? Okay. So it's like 2.5 months, basically, we're looking at. Yeah, you're right, Flamfer. He does have a horse. He's not on foot. Okay. All right. So, right. Between the end of June and beginning of July. Exactly. So we've got, call it 2.5 months between when Gandalf and Radagast meet and when Gwaihir shows up. So he's got lots of time to travel. I've got to think that, and they're collecting news first. So Radagast eventually meets up with the Eagles. When he meets up with the Eagles, he asks the Eagles very nicely if they would scout around, right? And they see many things in Rohan and other places, right? Mirkwood, right? All over the place. Okay. So, and yes, Heir of Numenor, I agree. Gandalf seems to assume that Radagast is not returning to Isengard because he tells him to send news to Gandalf and Saruman at Isengard, right? So if, Radagast is just going to be, getting there 2 days before him, there would be no point in doing that. So, yeah. Okay, so even if we let's assume it takes a full, let's assume that it takes a full 2 weeks for the Eagles to scout around, get back to Radagast, and then kind of for Gwaihir to kind of pool the information that the Eagles have gathered and set off flying down to Isengard to tell Gandalf and Saruman, right? Okay, so it's hard for me to think that the Eagles would take more than 2 weeks because they can fly. That's relatively fast. So, but let's give him 2 weeks, right? Let's give him 2 weeks for that. That means he's still got 2 months to find Gwaihir. Radagast does, from where he departs from Gandalf. And we don't know what other business he's got going on. Remember, Saruman sent him on this errand, right, on this journey that he hadn't been planning on taking. Radagast hadn't been planning on taking. He had presumably some other irons in the fire at the time, right? So he's going to go and figure out. He may have other things that he's attending to as well. How long does it take to find the Eagles? How long does it take to get to where they are? Are they up there at the High Pass, or are they? Is he somewhere? Does he know? I mean, I don't know where Gwaihir lives. Maybe Gwaihir doesn't live with the other Eagles up there. Maybe Gwaihir lives somewhere else. And Radagast knows where that is, right? No idea. Yeah. Okay. All right. But that makes sense. It does give him, Radagast, plenty of time. Even if he's going south, crossing by Tharbad, and then heading over to the Misty Mountains from there. And he might have reasons for that. There might be presumably lots of birds and beasts known to Radagast in this area. Now, fun little transitional observation. You guys, many of you who play The Lord of the Rings online will remember that fairly early on in gameplay, you meet Radagast. They place Radagast temporarily out in the Lone Lands, right? Out here in the Lone Lands, seeing to some issues that are developing over here. That strikes me actually as perfectly plausible, actually. Again, especially if he does end up kind of looping around in this direction, heading back towards, and we don't know, for all we know, he just doesn't want to go through Bree. Maybe he's going to go back south around the South Downs and then cut across Cardolan, and head up in this direction. So it is very possible that he could go through this area, and that he would have other business of his own to attend to on the way. What could be likelier than that, right? So anyway, that's yeah. Now, where is he heading? Now, I have no idea, Cook, if he would actually want to go that way. I was just saying that actually I think it's the apparent route that they give to Radagast in The Lord of the Rings Online strikes me as plausible. All right. Okay. With that, it's late now. I didn't expect our Radagast deliberations to take quite this long. But it would make a little bit of sense of him not being at Rhosgobel, especially if he doesn't even live there anymore. but if he's got other stuff to do, and anyway, he's off. By that time, he's already talked to the Eagles. What's he still up to now? Still talking to the Eagles? Who knows what Radagast is up to? Anyway, okay. I agree, Amathorn. Radagast does get short shrift. I don't mind also taking a little time for Radagast here. Anyway, okay. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for our text and map discussion here today. We will be back next week when we learn more about the reports that the scouts bring from their various their various directions. So I will see you guys next week, and it is field trip time.
Good evening.
Good evening, Valori. How are you?
I like all the conversations about fake hobbits. We're sitting there like, do they get like bootleg Russian hobbits? They're just
right.
Up there,
well, no, I mean there are only 4 bootleg Russian hobbits. I guess some of the extras from the party at the beginning could be around, maybe.
Maybe. Okay. There's some low-level people here. I cannot guarantee your safety.
Yes, definitely.
Saying that up front.
Definitely not guaranteed. Now, we never did find a milestone, did we? No, we did not.
No, I think we found a stable mast.
Yeah, so we're just going to stable master it up again towards the greater, what is it? Gundabad. That's where we're headed. The greater Gundabad area.
That's right, yep.
Right. Oh, man. Sorry, I'm just like marveling at looking at the LOTRO screen and being able to read the text without squinting because I'm wearing my glasses.
Yeah, I get that.
All right. Yeah, Jordan, I did think about using the in-game map for the text discussion. I decided to go with the book map. I should probably mount a horse, shouldn't I? With a book map, because I wanted to stick a little closer to Tolkien's map, because of course there are a bunch of things on the LOTRO map that are part of the the subcreation that the LOTRO folks have been doing, and all the things that they've added to the story, and I didn't want to confuse anything with those, so that's why I didn't. But I was tempted because I can zoom in more and kind of rove around a little bit better on the in-game map. But yeah.
Okay, let's see. We are going to Elderslades.
What do you
Drengol?
Elderslade, Anachorfu first. Yeah.
Yep, and then Drengol, I believe. It's that little one we find in Rock.
Oh, that's right, because we did find a new stable master.
Mm-hmm.
Right in the middle of a suggestive ruin, as I recall.
Yes. Well, I do like me a map. I like maps as much as Frodo and Bilbo like to have maps.
They're why I like maps so much.
Yeah, I remember the first map I had prominently displayed was a map of Middle-earth from the War in Middle-earth computer game. Which
okay.
We immediately had no luck in playing whatsoever, but it came with a really cool map.
Right. Okay, Drengol is where we're headed, not to Zudrumdan, which is where we were last time.
Oh, was it? Oh, okay. Well, maybe it's the next
Drengol is this time. That's
maybe
the new one that we found at the very end.
Okay, cool.
Okay. I love it when you have to go down this excruciatingly windy path. Up
like
to and back from. Yeah, I'm glad I don't have to. Boy, when I was taking slow goats in Moria, I could not even look at the screen. Like I actually had to turn away or shut my screen off. I got so motion sick watching those slow goats go around those circuitous paths.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, I think I agree that we are up close and personal with what looks like this looks like the diamonds from the spires. So let's go around and sneak a peek at Gundabad again. Yeah. Yeah, look at that. The stripes are even the same. We can even show, okay, so from here, we can identify three different classes of Gundabad spires. We've got the big, fat, tall spire in the middle, right?
Yeah.
Well, not in the middle, but left of middle.
Yeah.
And then you've got the skinnier spires. Both of these are lined with those diamonds all the way up and down, right?
Yeah.
Both of them have the dark vertical stripes behind the diamonds. The differences are the proportions. Like, notice how much bumpier the little one on the right is. The smaller one on the right, I should say. That is, the diamonds look like they're almost the same size as the bigger one, but they cover a bigger percentage of the area right on the side.
Yes.
And those seem to be the same as the spires that we see down on the, on the mezzanine level down in front here.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got Gundabad Spire Mark III, which are the no diamond, except I guess one diamond in the base of the spire.
Chrysler building looking ones.
And another one up at the top, it looks like, yes. There are diamonds up at the top and there are diamonds down at the bottom, but the spires themselves are not studded with diamonds.
Yeah.
I wonder, though, here's what I'm wondering. Are those in progress? Look at the bottom ones that have scaffolds around them, right? I wonder if they've just been installing new diamonds on the sides of these, and the top ones are going to get them, but they haven't worked up there yet.
Oh yeah,
you
gotta
think?
you gotta diamonds every couple millennia.
Well, yeah, you got to redo it. I mean, anyway, like this place was in the hand of, the orcs and the Angmarim, and so, who knows what they did with the diamonds. Now, I say diamonds, of course, I mean the diamond shapes, not like actual gems.
Somebody liked that shape.
Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to get up here, and I want to take a closer look at the diamonds, because this is clearly what we're seeing. This is definitely one of those spires. We can see the same vertical lines. It's really interesting in that it's so much, we can see that there's much more texture than from the distance it looks like, right? We get that interwoven effect even on the, the sort of turquoise blue, dark turquoise inside of the diamonds there, right?
Yeah,
and
it's definitely work.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we got also that kind of, that same kind of, notice there's almost that like three-dimensional, like weaving sense that it gives, right? Even though it is clearly only a two-dimensional, like it's just a facade, but yet it gives the impression of depth, right? To the blue in the middle of those diamonds and in the stripes.
Yeah, it has the gradients give it, but it is also it is three-dimensional. It does stick out of it.
Yeah,
it works with it. But
it does. Right. It's like the pointy bits are concave, is what you, or convex.
Convex, the middle's convex.
This was what I meant to say.
It's a very shallow triangular.
Right. They're pyramidal. In fact, the diamonds, the individual diamonds are pyramidal. Yes.
I wonder what the stone in the middle is, the white one. What if that was something more valuable that got nicked?
Oh, like in the very center?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Looks just like plain stone, but that would be a weird place to just have plain stone, even if it is.
It does. Yeah, you're right. Maybe it did get stolen. And yes, Emily, as you were pointing out, we can see on the inside of the tower, they're definitely not windows. They are merely external decorations. So they're just like very large doodads
Yeah, well spotted.
put on the
Carbuncles.
outside. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, there's a door here.
Yeah, JJ is wondering if the thing in the middle shows how they were affixed, right?
Hmm.
So what, JJ, you think that's a rivet in the middle or something like that? Now, here's my other question.
Cat's head's clipping through.
Right. Here's my other question. What was I standing on? Was this a statue?
Oh yeah, this is the top part of the statue that fell over. You pointed out the feet last week.
Where are the feet? Oh, yeah. There's the feet.
The Ozymandias feet. Yeah.
Right, Ozymandias. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So we've got the dwarf Ozymandias. Where'd he go? There he is. The dwarf Ozymandias there. And the rest of his statue. Look at this cruciform diamond here. Have we seen this cross before? It's a totally different color than the blues in the blues in the spire over there.
Is it? I can't tell whether it's a decoration or if it's just like an interesting cross section.
It looks like it was part of the statue.
Like it, yeah. It looks like it was like part of the haft or the head of the axe.
Maybe. That's very strange. Nothing else seems to be colored on here.
Yes.
Is this a nose? This is not his nose, is it? That I was just sliding off of? That's too
it's his
big to
beard.
be his nose. His beard?
Because we're on this is his breastplate back here. So either it's his beard or he thought.
Oh, right.
quite a
This
lot
is
of it.
his. Right. This is his. Like I'm standing on his sternum right now.
I think
right?
that actually no. I think this is a separate rock here. This guy.
Yeah, because isn't this his chest and the two arms?
Yeah, I think it's his beard then.
Right. So this would be the beard then sticking down, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. Where's Saganoth? Saganoth says he found the face. Down there? Oh, yeah, there's his face. Okay.
Yeah,
his
yeah,
hat or crown, if he was wearing a crown.
definitely a crown. Must be Durin then.
So this would be Durin?
Makes sense.
In which, so, and he's cut off like right below the bottom lip, like even his whole chin isn't there. So that would seem, if we then take that head and we glue it up here.
Yeah.
No, not up here, up over there.
Yeah.
Oh, the proportions still don't seem to work. Yeah, the head doesn't seem to be in proportion with that torso.
Maybe there'll be an intact one somewhere we can compare it to.
Yeah, maybe we can compare. In which case, I'm going to definitely be looking for this little cruciform square, because that's really very interesting.
It does look like it's the top or the bottom of the axe, whether it's the haft or the head.
Right.
There's a door over here that we can open, by the way.
Is there really? Well, hang on a second. Let me go up by Ozymandias Durin's feet. Do we have to go all the way around this way? Around the left-hand side here? Just checking. Flagstones, don't see any. Rather plain stones. I guess we can probably get around this way. Okay, yeah, here's the feet. Oh, interesting. We've got the interlocking rings.
Mm-hmm. The copper-looking ones.
Yeah, that's got to make you wonder the date of this statue, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it obviously looks old.
But if it was copper, it'd be green unless they have some sort of technique we don't know about, which, I wouldn't put it past them.
Right, which is possible. But the stonework here, the pedestal of the statue, looks very similar to the dwarf ruins we've been seeing all along the river. The Anduin, I mean, as we've been heading north. Yeah. The rings and the knotwork here. It could be a newer statue, but newer when? I mean,
How?
Gundabad would have fallen some time ago and only been lately recovered from goblins, right?
Yeah.
And this is still... Where are we? This is an inlet.
Yes,
Sorry,
looks like.
Okay. We're over here, despite where the green dot is. We're up here. So this is one of the... We're near the source of the Anduin. Is one of these things the sources of the Anduin? Officially labeled as the source of the Anduin?
I don't know. Although Carbronach is the only place that's named.
Yeah.
Is that the name of the river? Or is that just the name of the
But we can't go there, right? That's not...
I don't think we can go
doesn't
there.
exist yet? But
Yeah.
it is suggestively named as if it shall be sometime. But, you know, the really tantalizing thing about that is they'd have to go off the map, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
To do a region north
There'd
of
be
Gundabad?
dragons. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
They'll
way
be
up on the
updating
withered...
Stable Master map for the next expansion.
Yeah, way up onto the withered heath.
Blasted heath.
But I guess we have some room up here if they do... So they got an Ariador map and a Rovanian map. I guess there'd have to be a Forodwaith map, wouldn't there?
I guess.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, but this is me getting distracted.
Yeah, what is
Back
it?
to the feet. I don't see any of the colored stone anything like that cruciform square.
Yeah.
So that's kind of
Maybe
weird.
it's a different. Maybe there's two different statues. You did say the scale didn't add up.
Maybe it is two different statues. That'd be a little odd, but okay. Wow, this is a great view of that Angmarim encampment that we did not enter.
Yeah, with that greasy purple metal on it and
Yeah,
the
yeah.
beautiful spirit Halloween mood lighting.
Yep, and the metal spiky bits, the metal fish hooks that
Yeah, fish hooks.
suggest the new Angmarim. But it's got the old Angmarim walls around the outside of it.
Oh, we've seen them re-inhabit old places quite a lot. So.
Yeah. Oh, man. So those are the dwarf ruins. Two of the dwarf ruins. Two of those dwarf towers.
Yeah.
Down there.
Mm-hmm. Big shiny dwarf.
I'm looking at the tops of the spires because all of the spires, spire C, right? The ones without the diamonds or only the top and bottom diamonds have those little nubby tops, right?
Yep.
If there were only one or even maybe two of them, I would think them perhaps unfinished. Again, like we're still gonna, go up and rivet the diamonds, onto the sides of those. But the tops are identical everywhere. It looks like they're finished and designed to be nubby like that.
Yeah, the fact that they're all consistent does imply that this is a design choice and not a work in progress.
Exactly. Which leads me to believe that those are finished, in fact. Because the ones with the... so again, if the big, huge one, we call the big, huge one Spire Design A, right? And we call the smaller one with the diamonds that stick out more on the side, right? The proportionally larger diamonds really proportionally smaller
with
spire.
the same size diamonds.
Yeah. That's we call that Spire Design B. The ones without the diamonds or with fewer diamonds are C. So all of the ones that are in renovation down at the bottom are all Bs.
Yes, I can see that.
Not C's at all. And you can tell by the tops, right? You can tell by the spire extensions on the top. that those are Bs, not Cs, because they don't have the little nubby ones. Now, JJ points out that the diamonds at the top are on a different tier from the bottom. Yes, whereas the others have diamonds on the same tier plus the base. Exactly. Right. Yeah, no, it's just quite different. In fact, so different that the ones at the top are not even diamonds. Those are triangles. Inverted triangles. At the top of the spire on the C spires.
Yeah, that was the part that made me think Chrysler Building.
Yeah, the downward pointed triangle there.
Yeah.
And those...
That one's got the more Art Deco dwarven feel to it than the others.
And darned if those don't look like windows halfway down, like little slit windows. The two vertical slits that we can see on the...
I suppose they would need some real windows with all the fake ones.
Right. Okay, this one over here on the side is a little closer. Could be windows.
Oh yeah, that one fell over there. Yeah, that one definitely looks like a sea spire that fell down over there.
Maybe, but that makes this one that we were just looking at down here by the river, that makes this a B?
I'd say, I don't know.
Or is it an A?
It might be an A because the diamonds don't extend beyond the...
Yes.
Let's see, where on the blue line did the A's come out?
It is hard to say.
Because
both of them come right to the edge of the blue.
Yeah.
The outer edges of the blue.
Yeah. I think the blue stripes are the same distance. It's just the outside of the blue stripes that is different depending whether it's an A or a B.
Yes, the distance from the edge of the blue to the edge of the spire is greater for the A's. So the spire itself is wider, yes.
Yeah.
In which case, I think it looks more A-ish. I really do.
Yeah, it might be A. Yeah, unless there's a fourth kind of spire we did.
Which is weird because there seems to be only the one A spire upstanding.
Yeah.
I wonder where the other one would be.
I don't know.
We'll have to look for a base that could fit that.
Maybe it's like a Matryoshka doll, and the inside each of the spires is a little Durin.
Maybe. Okay, hang on. Let's we should go before too long. But you said there was a door?
It's down here.
Down by the stable master?
Right by the step. Whoop. Yep, right where I broke my ankle. Right. Oh, and someone is dead. Can someone help that? Because I cannot help that. I'm a
Oops.
helper.
Yes, we've had a casualty. Is this a jumping down off the
It's
cliff casualty?
It's our level 30 friend, but we can at least try to revive her.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
No, we won't be able to revive them here. It's too high level.
Yeah, It's still courteous to send them on their way, though.
That's true.
All right. Oh, a little stronghold.
Okay. All right. Hey, is there a milestone in here? Constantly looking for a new milestone. Not finding one ever.
I mean, we've gone 2 steps from the actual stable master, so
that's true.
I think we're kind of stuck with that. But look at the little columns. They got diamonds on them.
Yeah.
Oh, and there's a marking over here, almost like a snowflake. At the bottom here.
Oh yeah, we've seen that.
And the sort of Augish ruin-looking spiral shapes next to it.
Yeah.
You've seen it? Where did you see it? Was that further up?
We saw it by one of the bridges, I think.
I don't recall this. I remember suns. There was a sun motif, but I don't think I've seen a snowflake motif.
We definitely saw it.
Here.
Yeah, we definitely saw it, and it was relatively recently.
It is possible. It's one of the ones I missed.
Yeah, so we can see in the vaulting arches, we can see what is clearly identical. Identical blue striping patterns, right? just like on the spires.
Yep.
We do see that diamond pattern within the larger base of these pilasters here.
Yeah, yeah. This looks like an aqueduct or a vaulting.
The snowflake and the little swirly face thing. We've seen in other places.
We think the orange accents on the spires outside were these snowflake motifs?
It's possible. It's possible. But we can see, therefore, some continuity between, as you'd expect, if Gundabad was built by Durin and the followers of Durin, that there would be some, design features that would carry over from here to Moria, and then from Moria to Erebor and Ered Luin. Though the Longbeardian style, so in the, in the post-Thorin period, in Ered Luin, that's the newest species of Longbeard architecture.
True. What do you think the significance of Snowflake is? Sorry.
I don't know.
Because we're so up north?
With the snowflakes? Possibly.
Yeah.
Possibly. I mean, you'd think it would be pretty cold up here. That plaque, Jordan, that's what I'm talking about, the swirly face thing. That's just what I mean.
Yeah.
And we have seen that before. We've seen that on the base of bridges, some of the bridges over the Anduin, in some of the bases there. We've seen it. I don't know if we'll see it in Moria.
That'd be a good question to find out.
Yeah. It will be interesting to... We'll be traveling through Moria before too long.
With the curving lines, it's definitely something where they took a soft metal and they're beating curvy lines into it rather than the other stuff that looks like carved stone.
Yeah, yeah.
Probably copper.
Okay, so this is just a little carve out here. There's nothing else?
No, it looks like a refuge, I think.
Yeah. So what this was is hard to tell.
It looks
Could
like
have
a lot
been
of it collapsed in.
Right, I'm just thinking of where, yeah, it does. I'm just trying to think of what this, like in Gundabad days, like in the heyday of Gundabad, what this used to be. Maybe something like a servant's entrance, kind of like stables could have been down here, and...
Yes, stables would be likely this far from the main entrance, or maybe some sort of...
Right, and while you ride up to the main gate, or walk up to the main gate.
Right up by the river and the waterfall. It might have something to do with that as well.
True, yeah. Jordan was saying a boathouse down by the river. Yeah, maybe so. There's like an underground route to get down to here and then come out. So I'm trying to imagine I'm going out the door.
Some kind of freshwater maintenance system.
Here I am. Okay, assuming that there's not ruins right here, you come out right next to the river.
This would be a good source of fresh water.
Yeah. True.
Maybe
You've
fish.
got the waterfall right there.
Maybe this is where they had all their fish drying.
Yeah. Now there's other sources of water because they've got other rivers flowing right through the city. So they wouldn't need to bring water from all the way down here. But fishing, presumably. I mean, you've got that big, huge waterfall and stuff. So maybe from down here. Well, we've got another waterfall just south of here.
Maybe it's a guardhouse.
Wouldn't exactly want to put boats in to head south from here into the lake.
Deep water
but
too.
It is deep water. Yeah.
Deep, fast water. Yeah, it'd be a very short trip.
Yeah. What is that?
Garbage.
Yeah, refuse pile?
Yeah. Well, we know the orcs like to do that with their garbage.
Yeah. Huh. Okay. All right. Well, next time we will continue up towards Gundabad itself. I plan to stay here until we head down into Holland in the text, which we still should be several weeks away from. So we'll see. When, of course, we go down into Holland, we'll head into Eregion. we might even have to interrupt this area and come back to it when we're, because it won't take us nearly so long to explore Eregion as it will take us to get through the whole rest of the chapter. But, okay. Anyway, cool. All right. Well, standing here on this trash heap, I suppose I should let everybody go. Thanks, everybody, for joining us tonight. Fun field trip speculating about making these closer observations and discerning some of the patterns so we can explore further as we continue our views of not Gondaman. Did I say Gondaman before? Weird. Gundabad is what I mean. Anyway, thanks for joining us, and we will see you guys next week. Thanks, everybody.